Is life to be lived? If so, do you partake in its mystery, in its joy? Place yourself in the now, but with the mind of a child, but without societal programming. How do you view yourself? Are you even able to know this? I'd reckon if so, you might make fun of yourself, make silly gestures, and overall enjoy the experience of life without judgment, till you have something to compare yourself to, instilling the program, the trap of the ego illusion. Now let us, with the same original and playful mind, add in the component of knowledge. Well, with this child at heart, we wouldn't be likely to overthink, but we would know how to walk, or how to talk, or do the basic things a child ponders upon in his soon ability. Thus, we actually become superior in this manner. We have the ability to navigate life, but we aren't so focused on where exactly we are navigating. We are just living it out. Even without the intellect, we learn our lessons from nature or man with the time we grow up. Ask yourself, which lessons are of nature and which are of man? Are you able to also know this? The word purity or innocence, better yet spontaneity, may come to mind through this examination. Yet in this inquiry we are using our intellect, yet to truly answer this inquiry it requires something else. Not thinking nor even action, but inaction, a clearing of the mind, a purification of the heart. One may go into solitude in nature to find this, but for what nature does for such an effect, you may replicate anywhere, for all is nature. Sit with yourself and breathe. Get in touch with your senses. Recognize your desires and attachments and how they may control you. Recognize your images and how they fool you. Recognize even more your being as part of nature, not separate from it. Once more, we live in life, but we may attempt not to live. Do you need to use words? Do you need to have a job or go to school? Do you need to cook food? Do you even need to eat what other people eat? Do you need to read or recognize what other people read or recognize? Do you need to interpret my words, or can you create your own? Do we say we have needs when in reality they are wants? What happens when you get what you want? And what happens if you lose what you get? What happens when you think too much? What happens when you allow man-made things, even the simplest of things, to your view in your life? Does any sense of the natural lose value or sense and meaning with any lessons from the previous ages lost? What happens when the world does as you say? Is that not the problem for why you say otherwise? If the world is merely man versus man, or man versus nature, is this really so to invest ourselves a part of, when in reality, man is among man and both are a part of nature? Does everything not work together in this world? Why do we assume we are right, and how did we achieve such a conclusion in the first place? Did it not require not assuming we are right? Why do we assume what is natural can't always be good when we have no choice but to abide to nature and is thus a standard beyond all standards? Is not bad and good just part of the whole? Have we not been wrong as to wrong, heavy as to light, or hot as to warm? Why do we want to be right so much when all we have to do is just abide to an ever-present world that has no standard, as it is the only standard? Why attempt to explain truth when truth can't be explained with words? Are there certain things only we can do for ourselves? Can we only point the way to others? Is not everything I say a contradiction if you see it? Is not everything I say wrong if you see the polarity in perspective? Is not every attempt to mold nature a form of illusion, despite the cries and calls about its supposed reality? Truth is harder than people think, because it actually agrees with nobody. Thus, it can only truly agree with the one who is present and simply lives, best going with the change of the world as it is, without projection, ego, or attachment alike. Say otherwise, let me know, for a greater view is a view more of nature. But that view is also found among the lower and the inner, which is beyond us both, thus keeping our search for mystery if we still have our spontaneity in Wu Wei. And forever we may have fun because there is nothing that takes it down. The child no longer suppressed but not too erratic, the adult no longer programmed but not too thoughtful, neither in their claim over another but just living. You don't need an opinion, there's too many, and too much chatter in the mind. You don't need knowledge everyone thinks they know. You don't need an image, everyone is trying to be one. You don't need a purpose, life goes on its own and change happens on its own. You don't need to worry, what will come, and it's all a possibility and part of the way. You never need to think back, you are always moving forward as long as you have the present. Trust ensures the willingness to live, and there needs not to be a definition for morality or anything claimed of reality with this premises. Knowledge is great, but even greater is what creates it. And again, creation is interdependent. The claim of reality is not needed because reality will show on its own, as is the synderesis and conscience to have morality in the first place, as is life to spring of itself, as is the heart to never skip a beat, and the sun and moon in its course. Shall nature change, so be it, and it is what it is. Don't think of it doing any wrong, for even what man can do, nature will solve on its own. If nature is the answer, then you need not even ask question or contemplate how it is. It is given. If something is right in front of you, or within you, or on you, what determines that you see or sense it? Now you shall know what to do, and every ancient teacher said to do it. You may worry and ask about letting go, to being obedient and going with the flow of governments and slave systems, but if you let go, you would not be obedient to such things. You'd be obedient to nature, in following her way alone, as it is beyond illusion and has no material or indoctrinative dependence. And by inaction, the system falls apart on its own, with no knowledge nor morality nor convincing nor understanding statism at all. This ends all evil, as it would eventually cease to have a name, as nature's evil is mere process. So what will actually get people to just be? Any practice of which nature is the answer is realized comes first. Its authority is emphasized by alone unlearning statism. It may be through a multitude of methods. Then from one profound realization, as is the history of all abolitionism, we may observe another until we arrive at Wu Wei. As in the words of Lao Tzu, the scholar learns something every day, the sage unlearns something every day. Thank you very much for watching. This is Corey Enderlot. I wrote this article about how we need to reevaluate our own worldview, but less with the mind, more with the heart, more with our presence, and realize there's a balance to be attained between seeking out knowledge and seeking out merely being, living in this life. So we're not living out projections or the future or the past, but the present and then here and now and what actually is. And being able to go with the flow of life, but not the flow of society. These are all key concepts I will also talk about in my upcoming presentation about Taoism, so stay tuned for that. And do not forget that if you want your oppression, if you want your government and slave-like system, I'm going to put some questions on the screen for you. I want you to sit down with yourself, ask yourself these questions. And if you really hold on to the idea that you still need a government, just remember what Stockholm Syndrome is. It's a psychological phenomenon in which hostages express empathy and have positive feelings toward their captors, sometimes to the point of defending them. But again, ask yourself, were you born with chains on? Were you born having to sign a birth certificate, having to consent to some government that you never actually consented to? You are put into this scenario, into this life, into a government that you did not consent to. Now the life, the nature, you cannot prevent that. That is reality. You're a slave to nature. It's simply life. You have to go with it. But when it comes to man-made creations like that of the government, that forces you to obey, otherwise you will be thrown in a cage, for example. Question, do you really need that in your life? And is it actually productive for society? I would say no. And if you disagree with that, I encourage that you learn more. Go to theliberator.us. That's theliberator.us. Thank you very much for watching.